The gym buzzed with chatter as students prepared for another typical school day. Laughter echoed off the walls, sneakers squeaked across the floor, and the smell of gym mats filled the air. It was just another morning, until he walked in. The moment the gym doors opened, the atmosphere shifted, the noise dropped, and everyone turned their heads. There, standing at the entrance, was a figure they had never seen before. He wasn't wearing the usual school gym uniform. Instead, he had on something darker, a tight-fitting black suit that seemed to shimmer with an unnatural sheen, almost as if it was alive. His boots clicked sharply against the floor as he walked with a steady, confident stride. His face was stoic, his eyes scanning the room, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made everyone pause. He looked like someone who had seen too much, like he had been through battles that no one else could even begin to understand. Mr. Daniels, the gym teacher, cleared his throat nervously and motioned toward the newcomer. "Class, this is our new student, Talon." His voice was a little too sharp, a little too careful, as though he wasn't entirely sure what to make of the situation himself. "He's joining us for gym today." The students exchanged uneasy glances. The name was unfamiliar to everyone. No one had heard of a Talon transferring to their school. The murmurs started almost immediately. "Where's he from? What's with his clothes? He doesn't look like us." Talon's eyes flicked over the room, and for a brief second, it felt like the air was charged with something dangerous. His presence was almost overwhelming. No one had dared to ask him anything yet, but everyone was thinking the same thing. Why was he here? And where did he come from? Mr. Daniels motioned for the class to line up, shaking off his unease. "All right, everyone. Let's start with a warm-up. Talon, you can join the group. Don't hold back just because it's your first day." Without so much as a nod, Talon moved to the group. His movements were deliberate, almost mechanical, but graceful. It was like he already knew exactly how to position himself in the gym, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. As the students started their warm-up stretches, Talon simply stood still, watching them. His hands rested at his sides, and his gaze never wavered. It was unsettling. Most students, when they joined a new class, at least tried to blend in or smile awkwardly. But Talon didn't. He was too focused. His attention was entirely on the other students, almost as if he was sizing them up, assessing them. Mr. Daniels, trying to move the class along, clapped his hands together. "All right, let's get into some laps. 1 mile around the gym. Go." The students began to jog, but Talon didn't hesitate. He was already moving, effortlessly gliding ahead of the pack. His pace was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. He wasn't sprinting. He was running with the ease of someone who had done it his entire life. The others, struggling to keep up, exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of it. By the time most of the students were halfway through the mile, Talon was already finishing his final lap. He didn't even look winded. His breath was steady, his expression still unreadable. The others, red-faced and panting, had just crossed the halfway point. How was he so fast? How did he have so much energy? When Talon finished, he didn't slow down or stop. He merely slowed his pace and continued to walk along the track, waiting for the others to finish. His movements were smooth, controlled, like someone who had trained his entire life for this moment. The students began to murmur again, but this time it was louder. The whispers were becoming hard to ignore. "Did you see that? How fast was he?" One student asked breathlessly. "He's a freak," another replied, glancing at Talon's distant figure. When the last student finally crossed the finish line, they all gathered in the center of the gym. Talon was standing by the bleachers, his hands resting at his sides, still looking like he hadn't even broken a sweat. He stood out against the others, who were panting and bent over, trying to catch their breath. Mr. Daniels called for everyone to gather up, his eyes flicking nervously toward the newcomer. "Okay, that's enough for today," Mr. Daniels said quickly. "Talon, excellent job. Why don't you join the rest of the class for the next activity?" Talon simply nodded, but said nothing. His silence only made the tension in the room grow. No one knew what to say to him. Who was he? Where was he from? And why was he so different? As the rest of the class moved to the next station, Talon lingered at the back of the group, still observing. He didn't participate, not yet, and the others began to feel increasingly self-conscious. The gym felt smaller with him there, like the space was no longer enough for everyone. The students tried to focus on their exercises, but it was impossible to ignore him. He was a stranger, a mystery that none of them could solve. The bell rang, signaling the end of gym class, and the students quickly filed out, eager to leave the unsettling new student behind. But no one could shake the feeling that something had changed. Talon had entered their world, and nothing would be the same again. As they gathered their bags and left, one question lingered in the air. Who was Talon, and why had he come to their school? As the last student exited the gym, Talon stood by the door, watching them go. His face remained unreadable, but his eyes followed each one with a sharpness that was hard to ignore. His presence was like a storm waiting to happen. He didn't need to say anything. He didn't need to show emotion. All he had to do was stand there, and the entire class felt it. Something deep inside them told them that the gym had only been the beginning. Whatever Talon was here for, it was far from over. And no one was ready for what was coming next. The next day in gym class, the air was thick with tension. Talon's performance from the day before had haunted the students' minds all night. No one could stop talking about it. His speed, his silence, the way he seemed like a creature from another world. And yet, no one had the courage to ask him anything directly. He was still a mystery, and they were all afraid of what he might be capable of. As they filed into the gym, the whispers started again, but this time they felt more urgent. The class was already starting to settle into its usual rhythm, but Talon stood apart, as he always did. He didn't make an effort to blend in, and he didn't show any sign of nervousness or excitement, the way new students typically did. He simply stood against the wall, observing, like a predator waiting for its prey. Mr. Daniels clapped his hands, trying to bring some order to the chaos. "All right, everyone, today we'll do something a little different. We're going to play a game of dodgeball. Just teams of 4, and the rest of you will watch from the sidelines. Let's see who's the fastest, the most agile, the most strategic." His eyes briefly flicked to Talon, as if the challenge might be a test for him too. "Let's have some fun today." No one was eager to be on Talon's team. The gym had grown quieter since his arrival. His presence was like a shadow, hovering over them, making them feel uncomfortable and out of place. But as Mr. Daniels called out the teams, there was no way around it. Talon was placed on one of the teams. The moment the whistle blew to start the game, everything changed. The usual chaos of dodgeball was replaced with something far more intense. Talon moved with speed and precision, his body shifting in ways that seemed too fast to follow. His eyes never blinked as he locked onto a player across the court. And then, without warning, he hurled the ball with terrifying accuracy. The ball flew across the gym, a blur of motion, and hit one of the opposing players square in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. The student lay still, winded, barely able to catch his breath. It wasn't just the force of the throw. It was the absolute precision with which Talon had aimed. It was like he had known exactly where to throw without hesitation. It felt unnatural, and the rest of the class felt a deep unease settle over them. Talon didn't break his focus for a second. He didn't even glance at the down player. He was already readying his next throw, his body coiled like a spring, prepared for his next move. The remaining players on the opposing team hesitated, their eyes darting from Talon to one another. They had no idea how to handle them. They were used to the usual chaos of dodgeball, throwing balls, dodging hits, but with Talon in the game, it was different. He wasn't just playing to win. He was playing to dominate. A girl from the other team, Sarah, took a deep breath and tried to get into position. She had played sports before and considered herself good, but in the face of someone like Talon, she felt out of her depth. Still, she couldn't back down now. "All right, come on, we can do this," she muttered to her team. She tightened her grip on the dodgeball and threw it, aiming for Talon. But he was already moving, his eyes never leaving her as he dodged her throw without breaking stride. Before she could react, Talon had the ball in his hand, and he tossed it with such speed that it barely registered before it struck her teammate in the chest, knocking him out of the game. The silence in the gym was deafening. Talon's team had lost no one. The opposing team had already lost half its members. Talon's movements were swift and fluid, too quick to follow. It wasn't even a contest anymore. His mere presence had turned the game into something else entirely. Mr. Daniels, watching from the sidelines, felt his throat tighten. He hadn't expected this level of intensity. He had been hoping for a simple game, but what he was seeing was something else. This wasn't just physical skill. There was a level of focus, of danger, in Talon's actions. Mr. Daniels tried to push the unsettling feeling away, but he couldn't ignore it. Something about Talon was off, and he wasn't the only one who felt it. As the game progressed, Talon's team knocked out the last of the opposing players in quick succession. The final throw came from Talon himself, sending the last player flying across the gym with a force that left the class breathless. There was no cheering, no celebration, just stunned silence. Talon stood in the middle of the gym, his arms crossed, his expression as unreadable as ever. He didn't seem to care about the outcome of the game. To him, it was just another task completed. The rest of the class, on the other hand, couldn't stop staring. Some were in awe of his skill, while others were terrified by it. His speed, his precision, it was too much. Mr. Daniels blew the whistle to signal the end of the game, and the class began to slowly gather their things, moving in a haze of shock. They couldn't look away from Talon. He was like a force of nature, impossible to ignore, too powerful to approach. As the students filed out of the gym, they all glanced back at Talon. He remained where he stood, staring at the doors as if waiting for something. No one dared to approach him. No one even knew what to say. Sarah, still shaken from the game, walked slowly toward the door. She overheard two students whispering behind her, their voices low and nervous. "Is he dangerous?" one asked. "I don't know, but I think he could kill us all with his bare hands," the other replied. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The thought of Talon not just being physically strong, but also possibly being dangerous, made her heart race. She had never seen anything like it before. Outside, the sun was shining, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The school, once a place of safety and comfort, had suddenly become a little more dangerous. She didn't know what Talon was hiding, but it was clear that he was far more than just a new student. His presence, his ability, and the way he moved through the world made it obvious. Talon was a threat, and the rest of the school was about to find out just how much of a threat he could be. The following day, gym class was filled with tension. The whispers from the previous class had only grown louder. Talon was still a mystery, and every student in the school was now aware of his presence. No one had dared to approach him yet. They all just watched from a distance, wondering what kind of person he truly was. Was he just a freakishly talented student, or was there something more to him? The buzz of speculation made the atmosphere almost unbearable, and as soon as the bell rang for gym, everyone was eager to get it over with. Talon, as usual, stood silently at the edge of the gym, away from the others. His cold, calculating gaze scanned the room, but it never lingered on anyone for too long. His presence alone was enough to send a shiver down anyone's spine. It was as though he didn't belong, as if he were waiting for something, but no one knew what that might be. Today, Mr. Daniels had something different planned. Instead of the usual games, he wanted to do some team-building exercises. It was meant to be a way for the class to bond, but no one had much interest in bonding with Talon. They all wanted to avoid him, Yet they couldn't tear their eyes away from him either. "All right, team building day, everyone," Mr. Daniels announced, clapping his hands together. "We'll be doing trust falls, rope courses, and a few other exercises that require cooperation. Let's get into pairs." The students groaned collectively. Trust falls were meant to be awkward. But now, with Talon in the class, it felt even more uncomfortable. The idea of trusting anyone after seeing what Talon was capable of was unsettling. When the pairs were announced, the tension in the air grew thick. Talon stood alone, waiting to be paired with someone, and the rest of the class silently prayed that they wouldn't be the one stuck with him. As luck would have it, Mr. Daniels looked around and then pointed directly at Sarah. "Sarah, you're with Talon," Mr. Daniels said, his voice carrying a hint of hesitation. He looked at her with sympathy, but there was little he could do. Sarah froze. Her heart pounded in her chest as the other students turned their attention toward her. She hadn't expected this. She didn't want to be paired with him, but there was no way out. She looked over at Talon, who was already walking toward her with that same unreadable expression. His eyes were cold, focused. He didn't care about the social awkwardness that filled the air. He didn't care about anything, really. "Let's get this over with," she muttered to herself as she moved toward him. Talon didn't respond, but as they stood facing each other, the silence felt heavy. Sarah swallowed her fear and reluctantly stepped into position. She stood with her back to him, preparing for the trust fall. The other students gathered around, watching the interaction, but no one dared to speak. Sarah took a deep breath and said, "All right, Talon, catch me." Without a word, Talon raised his arms, his stance steady, unshaken. He was like a rock, unmoving and unflinching. Sarah hesitated for a moment, looking over her shoulder at him. His expression was still blank, but his eyes never left her. It felt like he was studying her, waiting for her to make her move, almost like he was predicting what she would do next. His intensity was unnerving. Finally, Sarah let herself fall backward. It was a short drop, but it felt like an eternity. She tensed, waiting for the impact, unsure of whether she would land safely or crash to the floor. But Talon didn't flinch. His arms shot up with lightning speed, catching her with the precision of a seasoned athlete. The force of his catch left her breathless for a moment. He hadn't even broken a sweat, and yet the way he held her made her feel weightless. There was no sign of effort on his face, no smile, no acknowledgement that he had just saved her from falling. It was as though it was all too easy for him. For a split second, Sarah felt a strange sensation of vulnerability. There was no comfort in the fact that Talon had caught her. If anything, it made her feel more exposed. His ability, his speed, his unwavering focus, it was all so far beyond what anyone could comprehend. As he lowered her gently to the floor, Sarah took a step back, trying to regain her composure. Her mind raced. She had no idea how to process what had just happened. It wasn't just the fact that he had caught her so effortlessly. It was the way he did it. It was too perfect, too unnatural. Talon wasn't just strong. He was otherworldly. The rest of the students watched in stunned silence. They were all too scared to try the trust fall with him now. Sarah felt their gazes on her as she quickly moved away from Talon, wanting to distance herself from the strange, uncomfortable feeling he had given her. Mr. Daniels, who had been standing off to the side, cleared his throat, trying to break the awkwardness. "All right, let's move on to the next activity." The rest of the class proceeded through the exercises, but it was clear that no one was fully engaged. Every glance toward Talon left them unsettled, and every time he moved, it was as though the space around him shifted. His movements were fluid, deliberate, and controlled. There was no mistaking it. Talon wasn't just a student, he was something else entirely. By the time the class ended, the atmosphere was thick with unanswered questions. No one spoke to Talon directly. He simply gathered his things and left, as he always did, without a word. But as Sarah walked out of the gym, her mind raced. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. She didn't know if it was a threat or something else entirely, but she felt it in her bones. There was something about Talon that didn't belong here, and deep down, she knew that the worst part hadn't even started yet. The school had barely scratched the surface of what Talon was capable of, and the tension in the air only grew with each passing day. Whatever he was here for, Sarah wasn't sure she wanted to find out. But one thing was certain, this was only the beginning. By the time the week ended, Talon had become the center of every conversation in school, even when he wasn't around. Everyone had a theory. Some said he was a soldier. Others believed he was part machine. A few even whispered that he might not be human at all, but no one had the courage to ask him anything. His presence was heavy, silent, and strange. In every class, Talon sat alone. He didn't ask questions. He didn't speak unless called on. Even then, his voice was flat, cold, and exact. He didn't smile. He didn't joke. It was like he wasn't really there, just watching, learning, calculating. And people noticed. Sarah, more than anyone, couldn't stop thinking about him. Ever since the trust fall, she'd had this strange feeling like she was being watched. She kept telling herself it was just her imagination, but it didn't go away, not even at home. One night, as she was walking back from the bus stop, she spotted someone across the street. Tall, still, watching. Her heart jumped. She blinked, but when she looked again, no one was there. Just the quiet hum of the streetlights and the cool wind brushing her face. But that feeling, being watched, it stayed with her. The next day at school, something changed. Mr. Daniels didn't show up for gym class. Instead, a substitute teacher, a nervous young man named Mr. Keller, stood in his place, holding a clipboard. Good morning, everyone," he said. "Mr. Daniels won't be here today, so I'll be covering for him. Let's start with, indoor circuit training. You'll be in pairs." The class groaned. More pair work meant someone had to be with Talon again. When names were called, the students stiffened. Kai and Talon. A collective murmur went through the class. Kai was one of the most popular students. Tall, athletic, loud. He loved attention, and he hated being shown up. Talon, of course, didn't react at all. He just stood up and walked to the center of the gym. Kai rolled his eyes and followed. The activity was simple. Timed sprints, push-ups, rope climbing, and agility jumps. Basic stuff for gym class. But as always, Talon didn't treat it like a game. On the sprint line, Talon moved like lightning. No warm-up, no build-up, just raw speed, even faster than last time. He didn't breathe heavily. He didn't sweat. He didn't even look tired. Kai struggled to keep up. His frustration grew with every drill. When it came time for the rope climb, Talon didn't just climb. He shot upward like a bullet, reaching the top in seconds. When he descended, it was smooth and silent. Kai followed, but his foot slipped halfway. He cursed, barely catching himself. "Dude, what are you?" Kai muttered under his breath. Talon looked at him. His expression didn't change, but his answer chilled Kai. "Trained." Kai laughed nervously. "Yeah, well, we all do gym." Talon didn't respond. At the final station, agility jumps. Kai was clearly trying to impress. He launched himself across the mats, moving quickly and yelling with each jump, showing off for the class. Talon, when it was his turn, said nothing. He simply jumped, cleanly, smoothly, without sound. His balance was perfect, his form exact. But something happened. During his final jump, Talon landed awkwardly. It wasn't enough to hurt him, but enough that he paused for a moment. His right leg twitched slightly, like something was wrong. A flash of silver showed just beneath his pant leg, quickly hidden again. Sarah saw it. She wasn't the only one. A few students gasped. "What was that?" Someone whispered, "Did you see his leg?" "Metal. I swear I saw metal." The whispers turned sharp. Questions spread fast. Was he wearing armor? Was he a robot? Was he something else? Talon stood still, his back straight, eyes forward. But now everyone was staring. The substitute teacher tried to keep order. All right. Let's calm down. Everyone back to your places. But it was too late. Kai stepped forward. Show us what's under your pants, robot boy. Talon turned to face him. No emotion, no anger, just a long, cold stare. I said, show us. Before Kai could finish, Talon moved. Not fast, not violently, just a simple step forward. But the way he moved, it made Kai freeze. The way a predator moves when it's no longer curious, but ready. Everyone fell silent. No one spoke, no one moved. Talon stopped just inches from Kai. His voice was low and calm. Don't touch me. Kai, who usually had a smart comeback for everything, said nothing. He backed away without another word. His hands trembled slightly. Talon looked around at the rest of the class, then turned and walked toward the back of the gym. He sat alone on the bench and stared at the wall. The rest of class passed in awkward silence. Mr. Keller didn't call for any more drills. He just told the students to stretch and wait for the bell. No one complained. After class, Sarah found herself walking behind Talon in the hallway. She didn't plan to say anything, but something made her speak. I saw your leg, she said softly. Talon didn't turn around. I know. Why are you here? He paused, then turned his head slightly toward her. Not for gym class. Then he walked away. Sarah stood frozen in the hallway. Her mind raced. The metal in his leg, the way he moved, the things he said, the way Kai, loud, proud Kai, backed off without a fight. There was more to Talon than anyone knew, and now Sarah was certain of one thing. Talon wasn't just trained. He wasn't just different. He was hiding something bigger, something dangerous. And whatever it was getting closer. It happened the next morning. The skies over the school were a strange shade of orange, glowing unnaturally through the windows. A low hum filled the air, like distant thunder that wouldn't stop. No one paid much attention at first. They thought it was construction or a storm rolling in. But then the sound grew louder. The lights in the school flickered. Students looked up. The teachers looked at each other, confused. Then the alarms began to ring. Not fire alarms. Not lockdown alerts. Something different. Something the students had never heard before. Outside, something massive moved across the sky, dark and silent. A giant triangular ship floated above the school, casting a shadow so wide it covered the entire field and parking lot. It didn't make a sound, but somehow it felt loud, like its presence was shaking the ground beneath them. Inside the building, panic started to rise. Teachers herded students into classrooms. Some screamed, others ran. Some just froze. No one knew what to do. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a joke. In the gym, Sarah stood by the door, staring out at the floating ship. Her heart was racing. Fear wrapped around her like ice. She couldn't look away. She didn't want to believe what she was seeing. Then she saw him. Talon was already outside, standing on the field, alone, facing the sky. Mr. Daniels, who had returned that morning and now stood at the gym entrance, ran toward the field. Talon, get back inside, he shouted. But Talon didn't move. His voice, when he finally spoke, was calm. It's too late. Everyone at the windows watched in silence as the ship above them opened. From beneath it, long black shapes began to drop. Machines, soldiers, something in between. They hit the ground silently and began spreading out in every direction. Are those drones? Someone whispered. Sarah knew the truth before anyone else did. They weren't here to scan. They weren't here to observe. They were here to invade. But then Talon moved, and everything changed. In one motion, he pulled something from his wrist. It expanded and clicked into place, a strange, high-tech blade. His calm face hardened. The silence around him vanished in a loud crack of energy. One of the black drones moved toward him. Talon sprinted. He didn't hesitate. In a flash, he jumped, spun, and drove his blade into the machine's chest. Sparks flew. The drone collapsed in pieces. Another rushed him. Then another. Talon didn't stop. He fought with a rhythm too fast, too sharp, too powerful to be human. From behind the school windows, the students and teachers watched in stunned silence. Sarah whispered, "He's fighting them." "Who is he?" Mr. Daniels said, breathless. As the fight raged, Talon was struck. One of the machines caught his shoulder with a pulse round. His body jolted, and metal glinted under his torn shirt. But he didn't fall. He didn't even slow down. He turned, charged, and ripped through the next attacker like paper. Then something even worse happened. From the ship, a bigger shape began to descend. Larger than the others, almost twice Talon's height. It landed with a crash, the ground shaking under its weight. This one was different, more armored, smarter, more deadly. It looked straight at Talon. "Unit 09, it said in a mechanical voice. "Stand down. Return to the fold." Sarah's eyes widened. "Unit 09. Talon stood still. Then he answered, "I'm not one of you anymore." The larger machine raised its weapon. Talon raised his blade. The two charged. Their clash was thunder. A blur of movement, light, and sound. Talon struck fast, but the machine was stronger. It threw him across the field like a ragdoll. He hit the ground, rolled, and stood again. Blood dripped from his lip, but he didn't stop. Sarah turned and ran outside, ignoring the shouts behind her. "Talon," she cried. He turned his head. For the first time, his expression cracked. "Stay back." "But I was created for war," he said quietly, "on a planet where only the strong survive. The death world. That's what they called it." Sarah's heart raced. "Then why are you here?" Talon looked up at the sky. "To run." He paused. "But they found me." The large machine lunged again. Talon met it midair. Their blades clashed. Sparks flew. And then, finally, Talon landed the hit. A deep strike through the machine's chest. It froze, made a low electric hum, and then collapsed into dust. The others stopped moving. One by one, the drone shut down and dropped to the ground. Silence fell again. Talon stood, barely breathing, body bruised and shaking. Sarah ran to him, catching him just as he dropped to his knees. "You saved us," she said softly. "No," Talon whispered. "I just delayed them." He looked at her with tired eyes. "There are more." Weeks passed. The government arrived, covered everything up, told the world it was a satellite malfunction. No one believed it, but no one questioned it either. The field was cleared. The school returned to normal, but Talon was gone. No one knew where he went. No messages, no goodbye. Except Sarah. She found a note in her locker one morning. It wasn't signed. "You were the only one who didn't look away. That's why I fought. That's why I'll keep fighting. T." She smiled sadly and folded the note into her pocket. Gen class was never the same again, but neither was Earth. Because out there, somewhere in the stars, something was still watching. And Talon was watching back.